Welcome to
House of Whimsical Terror.
I'm Esther.
I'm Mary.
And we're speaking to you from Tucson, Arizona.
And we are here to tell some real stories of the fantastical.
Occasionally, we do alter names to protect people's privacy. Other than that, all of our stories are true or
told to us as true.
Exactly. The story we are telling today is a continuation of the 9th Avenue house stories. So if you haven't heard that one yet, you may want to pop back to part 1 and listen to that so you can hear how haunted that house was. And
truly, and the progression of the intensity of the hauntings.
Exactly. How active those spirits were.
True. Yeah. So in tonight's part 2, we'll get started.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, house on 9th Avenue. The house was built, just a short recap, in 1895. There were some really interesting characters who lived there, which we found out later. And there were probably about 6 or 7 of us who lived in this house, all in our early 20s, and all of us good friends who got along really well and enjoyed our life there. We would, get food and we'd all cook it together and enjoy watching videos together and just
hanging
everything.
Out.
Yeah.
And being happy roommates in a haunted house.
It's a joyful place.
Yeah.
Well, this one day I got a phone call from my good friend, Nikki, who most of the people in the house knew. And she said, we are moving back and I would like to know if my new girlfriend and I, her name is Jan, could stay with you until we get a place. And I said, well, my first response is yes, but let me talk to all the folks.
Right.
So I talked to the rest of the roommates and they said yes, but do they know our house rules? Because we all followed, a certain group of rules that made us all happy and not fight with each other. One of them was the non-smoking rule. You smoke outside anywhere, but not inside. It was also on our lease that you couldn't smoke. So that was another reason. And Nikki was a smoker. There were other, just little rules that we had about noise and time and that sort of thing. So I called Nikki back and I said, hey, you and Jen are welcome to come. We have these rules. As you know, we don't have smoking inside. And Nikki knew that because she used to smoke on the balcony when we lived together the time before. And she said, Jan does smoke, but I'll let her know that that's a rule. I talked about other things like noise and blah, blah, blah. So they said, great. Well, the night they got there, it was actually like 4:00 in the morning, and I am not a morning person. So everyone else got up to go greet them, and I went into the bathroom to splash water in my face, and a few minutes later, there was a knock on the door, and it was Oscar. And I said, I'm coming out. I'm going to go greet them. I'm just waking up. And he said, no, I need to talk to you. And I said, okay, what? And he said, she's mean. That's all he said. She's mean. I thought he was talking about Nikki, and I got upset because I've known Nikki longer than I've known him. And I said, no, she's not. What are you talking about? He goes, I'm not talking about your friend. I'm talking about her girlfriend. She's mean. And I said, okay, I don't know how you could have gotten that from knowing her for 5 minutes, but
he was so sensitive. Like he would know things about people.
He would. He could see into the darkest part of them, which I think is one of his flaws, is he could see the darkest part of someone, but didn't always see their good parts. And one of the things that he could do is tell me, when I knew someone, oh, that person is power hungry, or that person is greedy, or that person is unkind, or whatever. He could even do it sometimes from a photo. And this is what he said about Jan. And of course, I dismissed him. I did not listen.
Even though oftentimes it would reveal itself to be true.
It always revealed itself without a doubt. Every time he said, this person is like that, it was always true. So I went out and she seemed perfectly nice. She was this cute little pixie of a person, thin, cute, short blonde hair. And she seemed really bubbly and was talking and visiting. And I thought, okay, well, he's wrong. She's lovely. So we all went to bed, and he told me she was making fun of our cooking utensils. And I said, who does that? That's like not a thing,
Right.
Oscar. And he goes, okay. He goes, okay, but just remember I told you, just like I always tell you. And I said, okay. And that kind of gave me the shivers, but I still kind of shook it off. Well, it started the very next day, like all of the things. She smoked in the house whenever she wanted and did not care if we told her not to. She would stomp up. She was a tiny thing, and she would stomp up the stairs that would just make this echoing sound throughout the house with her cute little boots. And it was just deafening. And, we would remind her, hey, we can hear that day and night. And one of the things, and I did warn Nikki, my friend Nikki, about this, is you're going to be staying in this little room with a creepy little door, and people are afraid to stay in there. I hope that's okay. And she's like, yeah. I like creepy little rooms with creepy doors.
Right.
I said, okay. So they were in that room. That's where they were staying. So it went on like that until, other things happened. Like they didn't contribute. Yeah. Nikki found a job almost right away, but she didn't get paid. She had to wait 2 weeks before her paycheck. And, we were like, okay, that's, just the way it is. And we didn't ask them for any rent. We just asked them to help pitch in for utilities, water and gas and electric. And they had said yes. So this one day, we were deciding to have a party. And, I had already had to talk to Jan a couple times about, behavior and things. And everyone else had said, look, can we just tell them they can't stay here? And I thought, I can't tell Nikki that. And they said, we want Nikki to stay too. It's her girlfriend, Jan. And I said, oh, okay. So I called Nikki and I said, look, I'm so sorry, but it's just become to the point where we can't live with Jan. You are always welcome here. Everyone else has said that you're welcome here. She can't live here. And I know that means that you might have to move out, and it breaks my heart, but it's just the way it has to be. And she said, okay. So 2 nights before the party, Jan catches me in the kitchen at night. And she says, I'm really sorry about everything, and I really will, try to change what's going on. I'm just really having a hard time. I'm thinking about the abuse that I suffered from my dad. And she started telling these horrific stories about her father, and it really, got to me. And I thought, wow, this is awful. And, I need to be more compassionate. So I went and told everybody else. I said, I can't tell them to leave. Like, this is what she said. And they're like, oh, but does she have to be so awful? And I'm like, I don't know, but so
intense,
very intense. So anyway, I said, okay. And, she seemed really apologetic. I'm like a whole different person. It was weird. Like a whole different person.
Yeah.
And so she left that day and came back, and she had with her a name-changing kit. And she looked really joyful, like she looked super happy. And she was about to stomp up the stairs. And, I just asked her, how you doing? She goes, great. I just got this name-changing kit. Well, back then, before the internet, name-changing kits cost anywhere from like $35 to $50, which was a lot of money back then. And I thought, okay, well, you can't help pay for any of the utilities or the food that you eat, because she would eat all the food and not replenish it. But you can buy a name-changing kit. And that was a little, off-putting, because everyone else was contributing in the best way they could. And she was not. So anyway, I kind of let that pass, but it got under my skin a bit. And a couple of days later, we have our New Year's Eve party. And it's a fun party. It's like a family party. My mom was there. My nephew, who was, a baby at the time, was there. It was just, it wasn't a big party, but it was a fun party. We all cooked together again like we did. We had stopped doing that because the house had become an uncomfortable place to live just because of that one person.
So shifted.
Yeah. We would just hang out in our bedrooms. No one wanted to come out. And so the party happens and she gets angry because there's a party happening. I mean, she was invited. Everyone's in her house. Everyone could go. My friend Nikki had to work late, so she wasn't there. But Jan left and we were like, oh, okay, well, she's mad, but it's our house. We can have a party. It wasn't like we were doing anything that would get the police to come. We were just partying. Yeah. And so she comes back a few hours later and stomps up the stairs. And so we're like, okay, well, she's back. She doesn't want to have a party. That's okay. And then at midnight, we all greet each other. And then, we forgot this part. Oscar was super, super sick. He got sick on New Year's Eve day, and was just in his room. He was sick, couldn't barely walk. And so we told him, just go to sleep, go up and be in your room, be asleep. And so I went up to say Happy New Year to him, and he kind of pushed me away and he said, go check the room. He could barely talk. He was so sick. And I'm like, what? And he was pointing to the room with the creepy little door and the room that Nikki and Jan were staying in. And I thought, oh no. So he goes, a bunch of noises coming from there, and it's not good, whatever it is. And so I go and I knock on the door, no answer, but I can hear her sobbing inside, like just crying hysterically. So I opened the door, and right about that time, the rest of the group came up to, tell Oscar Happy New Year. And I opened the door to the room next door to ours, and the built-in shelves were pulled off the wall. Like, this is a tiny person. She had to have superhuman strength to they were there since the beginning of the house. Like, they weren't new.
No.
Pulled them out of the wall. They were all like piled, like they're giant. They were floor to ceiling shelves just kind of plopped onto the middle of the room. She's sitting in this pile of like broken glass and books and just everything everywhere.
Papers and everything.
And my mom looks in. My mom was a counselor, and she said, Esther, go back downstairs. And when she said that, Oscar went into his room and laid back down. And you listen to your mom. So
you got to listen to mom.
Yeah.
To mom.
So I went down, and my mom came back down, and she said, look, she's really struggling with some things. Is there any way you could give them some more time here? And I was like, oh God. But I thought, okay, I'm going to be the good person. I'm going to be the compassionate person, even though I know my mom, is being played, but I was, you don't say no to your mom. So I said yes. And, just things continue the way they are. No apology for the crazy, chaos that had happened. And, so finally I get the call from Nikki, who says, no, we're moving out for sure. It's fine. And they move out, and Nikki calls and she goes, I want to pay you for everything that we owe, because I got my first paycheck. And so I talked to the group, and they all said, we don't want anything. We don't want rent. We don't want utilities. We just want a phone bill paid. So here's the story about the phone bill. Jan, who had told me all these horrible stories about her father, was calling him from our landline every night.
Right.
And spending hours on the phone. So there was this huge phone bill. This is before cell phones. So landlines, if you called someone in another state, it cost a fortune.
Yeah, it was every minute.
And so Jan had rung up this horrible phone bill. So I told Nikki, I said, all we want is the phone bill paid, and here's what the amount is. And she said, I will get that to you.
Yeah.
So she called me the next day and said, you should have the payment for the phone bill in your mailbox. I said, okay, great. So I ran outside, and there's nothing in the mailbox. So I told her, there's nothing in the mailbox. And she said, no, I'm sure there is. Look, look again, please. So I looked again. I said, there's nothing in the mailbox. And at that point, there were other people around. Nikki was at work, but it was a Sunday, so the rest of us were home. And so everyone's like kind of crowded around the phone, like, what is going on now? What new weirdness is happening? And she said, okay, I'll figure out what's going on. I'm going to call Jan because she was supposed to drop it off. Wow. We all looked at each other like, yeah. So the next day, Nikki calls me again. She goes, check and make sure the money is in there. It should be in an envelope. So I went out there and sure enough, there's an envelope. Mm-hmm. So I bring it in. Everyone's kind of crowded around. I open it up and in it, there's no money, but it is a letter just trashing us from Jan, telling us what terrible people we are, what horrible things. And there were weird things like all we cared about was watching videos, just stuff that you kind of do. And so at the bottom, there's this note kind of written sideways in different handwriting. And these are back in the olden days where we all knew each other's handwriting if we'd known each other for any amount of time, because we didn't text or email, we wrote to each other. And I said, oh my gosh, that looks like Nikki's handwriting, but it's not. Mm-hmm. And Kim looked over my shoulder and she goes, that is Nikki's handwriting. I said, no, it's someone forging Nikki's handwriting, because I'd known her so long that I knew her handwriting and could tell it was a really clever forgery, but just something about it, I knew it wasn't. So I call her and I read her the entire letter over the phone, and she says, I'll be right there. And so she shows up and she goes, show me the letter. And she opens it and reads it and then looks at the handwriting, the forged handwriting at the bottom. She goes, oh my God, that is my handwriting. And Kim goes, what? And she goes, no, it looks like my handwriting. This is someone trying to have my handwriting.
Right. Wow.
And so she gave us the money right then and there. And she said, I'm sorry that I sent Jan over. Well, eventually she left Jan, and Jan went on her merry way, like using other people, and all the way to California. We heard stories about her, like, convincing women to like buy her Jeeps and, all sorts of kids. Pay tuition for, college courses she never took and all of that. She was a piece of work. Anyway, we are alone now in the house, and we all have this love. Remember, we had that lovely party. We opened all the windows, had the music
energy
playing.
Completely changed.
Made a big old dinner like we used to, and just had a blast. We just were back to normal. Well, people started like getting other places or falling in love and moving in with other people. And at one point, it was just me and my sister Andre and Oscar. And I looked at Andre and I said, you know what? We've never like gone to the historical society and looked up like the history of this house. Let's go do that, because it was a day we all had off. So she said, okay. So we walked over to the historical society, which was super close to the house, and it was great. We looked up everything. The people who first lived there were Annie and Ben Daniels. Annie Daniels was one of, if not the first, one of the first superintendents of public schools in Pima County. Ben Daniels was one of Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Riders. And just really, really cool things that we learned.
Cool history for this house.
Yeah. One of the weird things I found out, though, was that Ben Daniels was the sheriff of Tucson. And one night I had this very vivid dream that I can remember to this day as though it happened in real life, not a dream. I was sitting downstairs in the 9th Avenue house, and I was sitting at a round table with my wife. I was a man in my dream. And I was saying, I think I am the sheriff of a town, not a city. Or is it a city? What is Tucson considered? Like, I really wanted Tucson to be a city, so I'd be the sheriff of a bigger place or a more important place. And I never forgot that dream. But then when I was at the Historical Society, I found out he had been the sheriff of Tucson. And I had that weird dream where I was, so that was cool. Other really cool things, that that we found out about the house. We were so excited. So we came back, my sister and I came back to the house. Oscar had been talking to the neighbor next door and finding out other stories because the man had lived there since he was a little boy. And he knew that one of the recent owners had committed suicide by putting his a hose to the exhaust pipe and breathing in. It was a horrible, horrible death. And that was one of the things that Oscar had found out about one of the owners of the house. We also found out that Ben Daniels had died in a car as well. He had a heart attack in the car, and they had the funeral in the home at 9th Avenue. Annie Daniels, who owned the house, had died like later in life in her room, which was on the first floor, which was my room when I first moved in.
Wow. So lots of spirits, lots of activity.
Her daughter also died there with tuberculosis as a very young girl.
Wow.
So we found out things like that. So we were telling Oscar about all the things we learned. We had found out about Annie and Ben Daniels, and when they died, it went to their nieces and nephews, and some of their nieces and nephews had moved into the house, and it had all the details about what they did for a living, who they were, special awards that they'd received, all the details.
So
and
much
then
information.
When they sold the house, who had owned it after that. And then it got to the mid to late 40s. I don't remember exactly when, but it was mid to late 40s. And a man named John Devereaux bought the house. There is nothing about John Devereaux. There is that he owned the house and lived in it for 2 years and nothing. Not about what he did for a living, whether he was married, if he had any kids, nothing.
So you had like all this information except for this one person.
Yeah. So that was our mystery person. And then after he sold the house, again, it picked up with these people own the house, blah, 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 until recent times where the Historical Society didn't do that type of thing anymore. So we were very excited, and we got back and we're telling Oscar, and I remember this distinctly. My sister and I remembered at exactly the same time. We looked at each other and we were about to talk about John Devereaux, and we remembered when Jan Carlson got the name-changing kit that she spent that money on, and I was irritated. She did change her name. She changed her name to J. Devereaux. Yeah. So that's the story within the story that I could not wait to tell.
Yeah.
But yeah, creepy.
Creepy.
She was in that creepy room. Other people had been too, but I think she was more amenable to something not okay.
Right. Well, that wraps up the story of the house on 9th. Yeah. Intense place. Intense. So, and I hope everyone enjoyed it, and that you'll follow us, and that you will tune in for our next session.
Yes.
Really soon. Oh, Esther, that was so creepy. So creepy.
Yeah, give us a follow too. We love that. And put comments. We want to hear from you.
Absolutely. Okay.
Okay, bye now.
Bye now.